That's a stretch, but thank you. Welcome, everyone. It's another wonderful week of Case Files
with Kat
and Ashley. Yay! We did. Oh! What are you drinking? We're trying to drink. Are you okay over there?
Listen, I got rid of the fake nails, and here I am trying to open up. I got nothing.
Guys, I wish you could see this. This is like a real struggle for her to open this can. I've only been gone like a week.
I know, but like I'm drinking.
Oh, very fancy.
Yeah, it's very fancy. It's a Brooklyn Pulp Art Hazy IPA. So this is, I mean, obviously from the Brooklyn Brewing Company. What's up, New York? I gotta find a tool to help me open the beer, though.
Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. Oh man, this is why we don't do videos for people. You don't want to see what's happening behind the scenes. I am not drinking. Thanks for asking. I'm drinking unsweet tea. I'm still still recovering, so no beer for me. But soon, very soon.
We almost lost you there, friend.
Yes.
You were really sick.
Yeah, I don't know. It was very weird. They tested me for everything under the sun. Still don't really know what it was.
I know what it was.
They basically gave me steroids, something called magic mouthwash, antibiotics, all kinds of things.
Did they test you for how many F's you had left? Because you have 0 F's left to give.
When I say they tested for everything, they took nose swabs and mouth swabs and throat panels, and they took blood, and they tested for COVID 2 or 3 times. They tested for mono, the flu, strep throat. They even tested for STDs. Like, when I say they tested for everything, they tested for everything. And so, you know, it is what it is. I'm here now. I'm recovered. I only have a small cough every now and then, and just still kind of tired, catching up on.
You need a break.
Yeah, so
everybody at home is saying, like, yes, God, you've had it's just like one thing after another.
And as soon as I recover from all of this, I've got to schedule my surgery for my lip thing to get my cyst removed. So fun times in Ashley life.
Y'all send her some like Venmo cash, or like maybe like, you know, give out like an address where they can send you beer or something.
Or just, you know, anything that
or anything, you know.
I'm so over it. So that's been my life for the last week and a half, 2 weeks. Actually, I was sick when we did the GER episode, just not like where I thought it was just allergies or something, you know. And then the next day, when our episode release day, I was not feeling great. I came to the office. Actually, after the show, I got really dizzy, like really, really dizzy. And I thought it was too much caffeine because I hadn't had coffee in a while. And I had a cold brew that morning and a Red Bull. And I just thought it was just a lot. And then the next day, I was real tired. Wasn't really feeling great. Came to the office for a little bit and then left. And then Friday morning, I woke up and my throat was so swollen shut. It felt like every time I breathed or moved my neck, that cats were just clawing the inside of my throat. I couldn't even swallow my own spit, guys. I was at urgent care as soon as they opened. And then they did all the tests, and it was still sore for like 3 or 4 days. And then my sinuses have just been bad ever since. So, anyways, here I am.
All good juju. Yeah, and then like last week, a friend of mine ended up in the hospital because she tripped and fell in Galveston and like busted up her head, but then broke her elbow.
Oh my God!
Right, like pretty badly too. You know, like very very badly. So I'm just kind of like between the two of you. My goodness. So I'm glad you're here and I'm glad you're better.
Yes.
But anyway, yeah. So what have you got for us this week?
Well, I did the question of the week, and it was, what if you were in a horror movie, what about you personally, what is the thing about you that would get you killed, that you know without a doubt would cause you to die in the horror movie?
Okay, so we're talking like general
like you talk too much, or yeah.
But this is like a Nightmare on Elm Street, or not The Conjuring. Does anyone die in The Conjuring? Okay, so if I were going to say what would get me killed, well, I'm not very quick. So I would say if I had to like run for my life, that would definitely do it. The other thing would be my fear of bugs. And I would be like, if we were outside and there'd be like mosquitoes, there's a spider. I would get distracted by like that. Like I would just, the killer would be chasing me and be like, I'm like, I'm trying to kill you here. You're taking away I'm not screaming in terror of the person. There are bugs. I don't like bugs. So they'd have to give me like a head start, but I'd still be like, there's spiders, I got stung by a yellow jacket this last weekend.
Oh man.
I hate bugs. I'm sorry for all of you bug lovers out there.
Did you have a bug in your ear one time?
Yes.
I would probably be afraid of bugs too. That really scares me. Ever since that happened to you,
it's my worst nightmare.
Ever since that happened to you, I've just been really nervous every time I go to sleep.
It's a nightmare, is what it is. It's a nightmare. It hurts. It's loud, and it's a nightmare. So yes, I don't like bugs. They are mean to me, and I don't like them. For all you bug lovers, I apologize. I don't mean to offend. But it would definitely get me killed because I would be too busy like,
just kill me now. I don't care.
Exactly. Oh my God. Exactly.
Mine would be probably my mouth, like 10,000%. I would just probably say something very inappropriate at the wrong time. My laziness, because I don't like to run. I would just be casually, briskly walking. I would probably lose my glasses. I do that a lot. Or I forget to pick them up. Like, I take them off, like, when I go to bed or something, and I'll get up and I'll forget. I'm like, why can't I see anything? I'm like, oh, shit. I have to go back upstairs and get my glasses. There's so many things, honestly. I'd want to save my dog, so I'd be, like, trying to escape with my fucking dogs under my arms. Like, there's so many things, guys. I would last maybe 10 minutes in the horror movie. Like, opening credits, I'd probably be dead.
I'd be the first dead. I would definitely be the first dead.
1,000%. I used to think I would be really good at horror movies, but the older I get, I'm like, no, I would 100% be dead. I would probably just annoy the killer, and he would just want to kill me.
I would not be Drew Barrymore in that, like, I wouldn't run up the stairs if I were scared, because I would look up at the stairs and go, that is a lot of stairs.
Like I said, my laziness would 100% get me killed.
It's not lazy. It's just like, it's pain for me. It's not just like,
for me, it's lazy.
Yeah. I look at the stairs and go, okay, here we go. my 6-year-old helps me up the stairs. That's I would die. So anyway, that's it. Yay! I can't wait to hear everybody's answer. Okay.
I didn't do any trivia this week because the story is it's about a missing child, and I've done a lot of trivia we've collectively done a lot of trivia about missing children, and so I just did a lot of research and included some other things in my story. So I just am going to skip trivia tonight. So a lot of this information comes directly from a documentary called Who Took Johnny and Iowa Cold Case Files. They both had a lot of really good information, and so this is where I got most of my information from. So just throwing that out there. So I'm talking about an unsolved missing persons case of Johnny Gosch. Johnny was a paperboy. He lived in West Des Moines, Iowa in 1982. To this date, there have still never been any arrests made in his case. It's considered open, but it is considered cold. His mother, Noreen, still campaigns for missing children. She still hopes that Johnny's alive. He was actually born on November 12th, 1969, so his birthday's coming up. The anniversary of his birthday is on Friday. So I'm going to talk a little bit about him, the kidnapping or abduction, the efforts that his mother and his father put into place, some laws that they got passed, some things they created, and then talk about a man that's really important in the case and important in highlighting some serious issues that were not talked about back then, like human trafficking and stuff like that. So I kind of apologize if the timelines are a little bit all over the place. I try to keep them in order, but there was so much information and so many parts that were going on at the same time between his missing case and some of the other things that happened. So I tried to keep it in line, but I'm sorry if you get confused. I'll try to keep it as in order as possible. Anyways, that was my disclaimer.
Okay.
So 12-year-old Des Moines, 12-year-old Des Moines Register paperboy, that was the name of the paper, was Des Moines Register. His name was Johnny Gosch, and he left his home on Sunday morning, September 5th, 1982, to begin his paper route. What are you... What?
Des Moines. Okay, but go ahead. Okay.
Whatever. People know what I mean. Everyone knows I can't speak. That word is going to come up a lot in this story.
Okay. Okay, so he had a paper route. Okay.
He had a paper route. So on the weekends, on Sundays, it was a tradition for his father to go with him. He would always wake his father up, and they would do the paper route together. But this particular Sunday, he didn't wake his father up. He was going to go on his own. So he left his house. He was wearing a t-shirt that said Kim's Academy on the back. He had warm-up pants. He had flip-flops on. He had his yellow paper bag, and he had a red wagon that had his last name on it. Normally, his father, like I said, would go with him. But on this particular day, Johnny took their family dog with him, which was just like a little wiener dog. I think she was like a little wiener dog. Her name was Gretchen. Johnny never came home. What happened after that, after him leaving his house, has been the subject of speculation for more than 3 decades. He was supposed to do this paper route. A lot of people started to call his parents, say, hey, we haven't gotten our paper. Is Johnny delivering the paper today? So this caused his father to go out and look for him. He found the wagon with all the newspapers in it, and they found their dog tied up to the wagon.
Oh my God.
So they didn't take the dog. It was strictly the abduction of Johnny. So when Johnny was out, there were several witnesses who say they saw Johnny talking to a man in a car, and it was believed that the driver had signaled another person to grab Johnny. Like it was a ruse. Like he was talking to Johnny, asking for directions. So a man that was out was also asked for directions. Anyway, so this man told the police that he heard, or he had seen this guy talking to Johnny, asking for directions. He didn't think anything of it. It was very normal to ask a paper boy for directions. The guy seemed friendly, so the man just kept on. And at some point, it's believed that someone was signaled to grab Johnny, or maybe the guy dragged him in. No one really knows how they got Johnny, just that multiple witnesses saw this man in this car talking to Johnny as well as other paper boys. Okay. So, excuse me. The police lieutenant at the time was named Jeff Miller. He was a rookie cop at the time. He told reporters that the police had began searching the area pretty much as soon as the mom called, but that is not what actually happened, according to the mother. The mother said the police took so long to get there that she had already talked to witnesses herself. She had already called newspaper. Like, she had done all of this stuff herself already. Because we'll talk a little bit more about this, but in those days, it was the law, or what police officers went by, that it had to be 72 hours before they would file a missing persons report. It did not matter if it was a minor, did not matter if someone witnessed them. Basically, you had to prove they were actually missing and not a runaway or whatever. So
this was in 80.
This was in 82.
So what is it now? A 24-hour?
Well, because of them and the laws that they got passed that I'll talk about more later, it's immediate for minors.
It's what?
Immediate for minors.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, if you're a minor, it's an immediate thing now. So, he says they went ahead and called in the staff, the troopers, they called in detectives. He said they called in the state patrol. He said they did a door-to-door canvass of the neighborhood trying to find someone who saw something of Johnny, which, again, the mother said was partially true, but not really. A reoccurring theme through this is that the police really didn't do shit. And it was not just her that said this. It was other people who also said this that I'll talk about later on. But it was the mother that got the witness statements of people talking to, people saying, I saw Johnny talking to a man in this car. This is the exact car I saw him talking to. Some guy also said that he had heard a car door. So he looked out his bedroom window and saw Johnny talking to. So there were several witnesses, and the mother got all of the statements, and she gave them to the police. So,
oh my God.
1 month after the son's disappearance, Noreen, she founded the Johnny Gosch Foundation and also developed a program called In Defense of Children. She began touring the nation, making nearly 1,000 personal appearances with law enforcement, missing person organizations involving human trafficking, and doing whatever she could to increase overall awareness of crimes involving children. On July 1st, 1984, 2 years after Johnny disappeared, she authored a bill and got it passed into Iowa law called the Johnny Gosch Bill, and it mandated immediate police involvement whenever a child went missing, and was subsequent. Oh my God, I cannot say those. It was adopted by 8 additional states shortly after. So prior to this, like I mentioned, the law enforcement had to wait 72 hours before they would investigate a missing persons case. According to the police, and this was a direct quote, you had to prove a child was missing and not a runaway, because they just assumed that most children were going to return home and they were just out doing whatever. Which
did they learn nothing from Dean Coral? I mean, seriously, how many of those kids weren't runaways? Jesus.
That same year, she traveled to Washington, D.C. and testified before Congress during hearings on organized crime. Her testimony, she said, led to the death threat. She got death threats, and she was
what?
Yeah. Because she was preaching because at one point they had hired private investigators, and this private investigator brought up human trafficking. And at that time, human trafficking, and this was in Iowa, human trafficking was not as prominent there. It wasn't talked about. Pedophiles weren't really talked about. It just wasn't. In the 80s, kids were running around. They came home at dark. You played outside. People left their doors open. It was a different time. Especially
how did we survive?
Like, it was a different time.
That's how I live.
And so when she started talking about these things, she started getting a lot of death threats because the people that were being named were very prominent people. And I will talk very more in depth in that later on. So she was getting death threats. And then eventually her and John Walsh from America's Most Wanted, his son Adam Walsh, which had been murdered, together with John Walsh and parents of some other high-profile missing children, they collectively formed the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which is still today. And President Ronald Reagan had invited her to the center's opening and dedication. She worked on 2 documentaries. She wrote a book called Why Johnny Can't Come Home. So she was very, very active in trying to solve her son's case, and trying to hunt down witnesses, and trying to figure out what was going on with this human trafficking, with helping other families with missing children. So after Johnny's disappearance, 2 more boys from the same area vanished under very similar circumstances. Another paper boy who was 13, his name was Eugene Martinez, and Eugene Martin. His name was Eugene Martin, and he vanished from the South Side on August 12th, 1984. So almost 2 years from, almost 2 years from when Johnny was taken. So Johnny,
how old was he?
13. So similar age.
Yeah.
He was a paper boy. Same city. Johnny and Eugene became the second and third children to have their photos on milk cartons.
Wow.
Yeah, and almost 2 years after Eugene's disappearance, 4 years after Johnny's, 13-year-old Mark Allen told his mom that he was going to go walk down to a friend's house and he would be back soon. He disappeared, never returned home. The police claimed they could not find any connection to the 3 boys, even though they disappeared around the same area during the same time frame, were the same age, looked very similar. Witnesses had all said they had seen them talking to a man in a car before their disappearances. But the police of this town said, we don't see a connection.
This is giving me so much anxiety. I just have to tell you.
This is just the beginning. Wait till I get further on.
I'm trying not to cry now because I can't even imagine what's coming right in the future. But
the police were so useless. It was like they just didn't want to talk about it. And so after Eugene Martin disappeared in 1984, a relative working at Anderson and Erickson's Dairy reached out to company president Jim Erickson for help. The Register, which was the newspaper that Johnny had worked for, had run full-page ads with the boys' pictures and information. A local trucking company had put poster-sized images of the boys on the sides of their trucks. The employees had contacted the president of this company to see if there wasn't something else they could do. So Erickson said yes, and that same month they began running the photos and short bios of the boys on the dairy's half-gallon milk cartons. And it got the boys into thousands of homes every morning in that area. So A&E launched the milk carton program, and then Prairie Farms Dairy decided to do the same, and then it soon became a nationwide thing. If you listen to the episode I did a while back on Eaton, the boy's name was Eaton. He was also abducted, and it was widely thought that he was the first to appear on the milk carton, which is still true. He was the first to appear on the milk cartons nationwide. However, Anderson and Erickson officially launched the original concept of putting children on milk cartons in their area in 1984. And so the program's success led to other items being used for missing children, which are still used today, like shopping bags, soda bottles, missing flyers, billboards. But the Missing Children Milk Carton campaign was very short-lived. It only ran a few years and ended because many parents complained that seeing the pictures of missing children every day was scaring their own children. And then eventually milk cartons were replaced by plastic jugs. But the contributing factor in the beginning was parents complaining about seeing missing kids scaring their own children.
Well, it scared me, but it scared me into having some sense about maybe not to talk, so if I saw anything or anything happened to me on the way home, I would tell my mom, but it wasn't something that she complained about. She wasn't I wish they wouldn't do that. Maybe that's why I got into true crime. I was 8 in 1984, you know? Like, that's crazy. Yeah. Like, I remember it very well. Very well.
So even though the milk cartons were getting into thousands of homes, getting children in front of them, it was eventually said that it wasn't helping so much in finding the children. So they started to look into other avenues, the billboards, the flyers, the postcards, all of those things. So during this whole ordeal, like I mentioned, the police were very unhelpful. The police chief was very rude to Noreen all of the time. He didn't want to talk to her. He didn't want to follow up on her leads. He said he called her annoying. He called her aggressive because she would have to call and follow up with them because they weren't doing anything. And so then it was discovered that he had actually routinely been doing police work while intoxicated. 18 police officers filed complaints against him, and eventually he retired.
He was a misogynist.
But even him aside, all of the parents of these missing children felt that the police in this particular area felt the police were not helpful and they didn't investigate it properly. Mark Allen's mother was named Nancy. She has stated she doesn't know whether her son's disappearance is linked to the disappearance of Johnny Gosch or Eugene Martin, but felt that police were reluctant to pursue it because of the other two missing boys and never even considered that they could have been linked, didn't even look into the possibility. And she was quoted saying, "I got the distinct feeling that the police did not want parents to be frightened to let their children sell newspapers or do different things," Nancy Allen told Who's TV reporter in a story Channel 13 aired on November 25th, 2010. So she felt like they didn't want to scare other children.
So as a parent, I would have been like, you're not delivering newspapers anymore. But I'm sure the newspapers are then going, hey, we need to have people delivering, so we can't scare. I mean, there's a lot of interests involved at that point. You know, money has to be made.
Yeah.
But as a parent, I would be like, nah, you're not doing that anymore.
So more than 3 decades after more than 2 decades after all three boys disappeared, more things started happening. Early one morning in September of 2006, Noreen Gosch said a mysterious envelope showed up on her front doorstep. Inside, she said she found 3 disturbing photos of several boys. They were tied up. They were gagged. There was photos of boys by themselves, but they were all under distress. They were all tied up. One of those boys looked very much like Johnny. Noreen tracked the pictures to a website selling child pornography, but the site was quickly shut down. Noreen sent the photos to the police and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. She included a photo that had 3 unidentified boys in it. And then she included the photos that she said were Johnny. And she was identifying these photos of Johnny based on birthmarks and some other things. The police not only told her that they did not believe that it was Johnny, that they were not going to investigate it as Johnny, and that they did look into the other 3 boys. It turned out that those 3 boys had been previously identified involving a case in Florida, but the photos that had the boy that she was claiming to be Johnny, that boy was never identified. And the police never investigated it as Johnny because they just did not want to believe that that both Noreen and John, which John was the father, said, this is Johnny. We know this is Johnny. This looks just like our son. He has the similar marks or whatever. Police basically said there's no way they could know that. They couldn't enhance the photos enough to see it. You know, the parents were basically crazy, that they were just seeing things they wanted to see, but it was not even possible that it was Johnny. So they just didn't even investigate it. So that is the background for the most part on the actual abduction. Johnny went to his paper route for the first time by himself. What?
Can you hear my family? I feel like they're really loud.
No,
sorry. Okay. Sorry for the interruption. All right.
So he went to do his paper route, took the dog with him. People started calling the parents, couldn't find him, all of that stuff. And so that's the background. And so I wanted to do a little more about some of the timeline events in order. And then I want to talk about a man named Paul Bonnaci, because he was a very important character that shed a lot of light on things that the police just did not give a shit about. So in 1982, John goes missing. 1984, Eugene is missing. 1984 is when John Walsh and the Gosches and other parents formed the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children. 1985, a dollar bill surfaced with a written note on it that said, "I am alive," and had Johnny Gosch's signature on it. A lady had received this bill as change in Sioux City, Iowa. Johnny's parents confirmed that that was his signature. And the lady had sent the bill to them. They had the bill. Of course, the police are like, well, anyone could have written that. So they did investigate it. Oh my God. Once again, the parents were like, this is his signature. 1986, Mark Allen disappeared. His mother was quoted in the documentary saying there are times the news says they found a body, and in one instance you hold your breath and you bite your fingernails and you hope they tell you it's not your child, but in other ways you wish they would just come out and say, we found your child. That way you can bury them and go to rest. Noreen, again, this is Johnny's mother, believes that the police never found a connection between the cases because during these years, human trafficking and pedophilia networks were not commonly spoken about. And no one would really listen to her when she said that that was what she thought had happened. And she got this information from a private investigator who used to be a retired cop. There was an author who was writing about this situation, not about Johnny, but about human trafficking. There was there was all kinds of people that were talking about this and saying that this was most likely what was happening with these boys that were coming up missing. And just nobody would listen to her. Nobody that could do anything was listening to her. So, not just that, but as I mentioned, the police did not do a thorough investigation. I mean, it was just botched from the beginning. So early on in the investigation, when Noreen first called the police about her missing son, she also called the FBI. This is when he first went missing. And agents David Oxler and Ed Mall came to the Gosch's residence. And this is a direct quote from Noreen. As they sat foot into my home, they announced they would not enter the case because the police chief did not want their help. And it was up to us to prove that Johnny was in danger. They could not help until we proved Johnny was in danger. So Gosch told the agents there were 5 witnesses, but it did no good. They refused to enter the case, so I told them to get out of my house. Why would the police chief do this? Therein lies part of the answer to this case, she said. So the police chief was preventing the FBI from doing any kind of investigation on these boys. Well, at the time, it was just Johnny missing. But the FBI said, well, we can't get involved unless you can prove Johnny's in danger. But she couldn't prove Johnny was in danger because the police wouldn't investigate any of the claims that she was making. So throughout the years, Noreen never lost sight of the fact that Johnny was the victim. She said many times parents in this situation take on the role of a victim. It is very easy to lose your strength, focus, and effectiveness when you do that. The fact that we do not have police or the FBI support meant it was up to me to run the investigation. I stayed focused as any interruptions could mean the end of Johnny's life, she said. So she continued, and still to this day continues, to give practical advice to other parents when kidnappings take place. She says it's very important for the families to be involved. After a few weeks of a kidnapping, the law enforcement agents and the FBI agents, they go home. So the parents need to have a plan B for when that happens. And so she was the main person working her son's case. And if you watch the documentary, Who Took Johnny, they talk about a lot of this. Like I said, a lot of this information is coming straight from there. It is infuriating. The fact that this mother had to go and find witnesses, had to hire private investigators, had to listen to the police tell her she was full of shit, not investigating actual evidence. And when I start talking about Paul Bonnaci, it is, I don't even have children, and it makes me so mad. about what happened. And it's just really sad that these parents knew what happened to their son, essentially, and there was nothing that could be done about it.
Do you think that the police chief specifically, because he was so opposed to anything really being done, do you think that he had any involvement in this sort of enterprise of
I'll
picking
talk
up
a little
these...
bit more about that, but in the documentary itself, the American Most Wanted investigators talk a lot about how it is very evident that whoever was involved had control of the police, they had control of the media, because as they say, when you hold the power, you hold the control. When you're rich and powerful, you can pretty much do whatever you want and get away with it. And so I'm going to talk about Paul Bonnaci now. So Paul was a man that in jail, he claimed he helped abduct Johnny. He claimed he was told to hold him down in the back of a car and conceal his face. Paul himself was a victim of this child prostitution network that was centered in Omaha, Nebraska. He was 24 at the time of the admission, but he had been being abused since the age of 6.
Oh my God.
Now, Paul had been diagnosed with multiple personality disorder, and it was said that he developed this due to the trauma that he was put through. Like, he developed these personalities to help him survive. Now, he was a convicted sex offender himself because they basically made him out to be this monster for crimes that he was forced to commit as part of this child networking. So he said in an interview, and this is an interview with everybody but the police, because as I say multiple times, the police never interviewed this man. So he was in jail for, there was a separate case. It's called the Franklin Scandal. It was a money fraud situation that I'm going to talk about, but he got originally arrested as part of that scandal. Okay, so anyways, he was quoted saying, "I can hear what these personalities are saying. I know what they've done to Johnny." During one of his interviews, Paul showed drawings of his different personalities and stated that it was only through these personalities that he could remember the day he helped kidnap Johnny. Paul could call forward the personalities at will. One of his personalities was named Mark Anderson and was a 15-year-old boy, and he was the one who was responsible for chloroforming Johnny during the abduction and holding him down.
Oh my gosh.
Johnny Gosch's mother went to visit Paul in prison, and during the meeting, he drew a map of the plan, like in a replica of what the abductors had. And on the map, he drew an X of the exact spot that Johnny was taken from. And there was no way that he could have known that unless he was there, because in the news stories, people were saying that he was abducted on the corner, but he actually wasn't. And on Paul's map, it was the exact spot where Johnny's father had found his wagon and the dog.
Ooh, it's got the chills. Ugh.
When Paul was asked why Johnny was taken, he responded that the abductors wanted kids who hadn't been used, aka they were virgins, and who were close to their families because they liked to hurt people. And they said that he also felt the ones that were close to their families were less likely to run because they were afraid that they might do something to their families if they ran. So Paul admitted that he was the first one that was forced to do things with Johnny on film. And Johnny's mom knew that Paul was not lying about any of this, because not only was the map accurate, but he revealed some very personal information during this meeting that only someone who had met and seen Johnny and talked to Johnny could know, such as scars, where they were, how he got them, his birthmark. He talked about his stammer that he would get when he would get nervous. And he talked about some personal details about the mother that Johnny had told him, like, my mother used to take me to her yoga class and stuff. Only things that someone who had talked to Johnny could know. After all of this was all on camera, the meeting with her, the meetings with his lawyers, everything was on camera. It was given to the police. The police reviewed the taping of the meeting. They did not go talk to Paul. The FBI did not go talk to Paul. They said there wasn't enough evidence that Paul was involved, even though he literally gave details only the abductor would know. Literally gave them where he was abducted, personal information, who was involved. He was arrested as part of the network. And the police were like, he could have made all of that up.
But I want to throw things.
But as his lawyer said, and multiple other investigators said, there was nothing. He did not gain anything. If he was lying about it, he didn't get a shorter sentence. He still had to serve his prison time for what he was accused of. He still was registered. He was still abused and traumatized himself. Like, he gained nothing by making these confessions. And the police still didn't. So 10 years afterwards, this happened, they went and talked to Paul's relatives or his siblings to see if they thought that Paul could be involved or whatever. But that was 10 years later, and Paul had since already given so much more information. The mother had taken things into her own hands. So in 1992, America's Most Wanted did an episode over Johnny and mentioned Paul's story and interview. During the episode, America's Most Wanted crews, they were pretty skeptical, just like the FBI, just like the police. They kind of thought he was a con man since he was in prison. But he told stories of Johnny being in Colorado in 1986 and said that Johnny had been sold to a man named Colonel, and that he had tried to run away. And so when he ran away and they got him, they branded him with a tattoo. And they didn't believe Paul. They said that he was crazy. He had multiple personality disorder. He was just trying to get some fame. But after the episode aired, they received so many anonymous calls from children who sent pictures in and said they had the same branding because the same thing happened to them. They were just lucky enough to get away, or they aged out because they were too old and no one wanted them anymore. And so it confirmed, their stories confirmed everything that this man was saying. Police and FBI still did not get involved. They did not believe Paul. At this point, America's Most Wanted investigators, however, did start to take Paul more seriously. He described a house in Colorado where they used to keep the kids that they had taken. He described a chamber that had been dug out under the house where the kids had been held in case police showed up. He described the inside of the house, the whole house, before ever getting there. So he takes them to this house. They get there. He has a breakdown. He's in the documentary. He has a breakdown. Memories start triggering for him, and he can't go in the house. He does take him in the chamber. It is exactly as he described. They find, so this house was abandoned at this point. They find carvings of kids' initials all around the chamber. They find other evidence that children had been stashed there. They start digging into who owns this house? Why is it abandoned? It was a former prison guard who had since disappeared. He's the last known owner of the house, hasn't been heard of, can't be found. But I thought it was interesting that it was a prison guard, someone in the industry, I guess, that owned the house. So they had composite sketches of men involved in the ring from Paul and from some other kids that had called in. But because they did not have names attached to them, they couldn't find them. They couldn't bring them in. As the America's Most Wanted investigators said, there are things that you think are true. There are things that you know to be true. And then there are things that you can prove in court. And those are the things that matter. Unfortunately, we didn't have anything that we could prove in court. America's Most Wanted investigators also said they felt if they could have solved the case with all of their resources, it would never get solved. But also stated that it was evident that no one else was trying to solve it. To this date, the police never once interviewed Paul Bonnaci about the Johnny Gosch case. The FBI never interviewed Paul about it. They talked to him about some other things, but never about this.
To this date.
To this date.
Oh my.
Never talked to him. Johnny's mother often stated that she was just more appalled than shocked anymore by the lack of work by the police department and the FBI. So, in Omaha, Nebraska, where Paul said the pedophile sex trafficking network was located, an author named Nick Bryant, he wrote about the Franklin scandal, which is what I mentioned earlier, it was a wire transferring fraud situation that ended up being linked to child abuse. Like, it was clear that it was being used to buy children and transport them and other things. He had been investigating the cover-up of this pedophile network for 10 years. He claims that the child prostitution network was centered in Omaha and would fly children coast to coast and sell them to the rich and powerful. They would use blackmail to keep these rich and powerful people quiet. And when I say rich and powerful, I'm talking about celebrities, businessmen, like high-class people, men, women, not just men, buying these children. John DeCamp was a senator at the time. He was a young man. He was a senator at the time that the abduction happened, but he was investigating a number of cases of children who claimed to have been sexually assaulted by this network, who had been claimed to have been abducted by it. And he received a letter from Paul Bonnaci, and at that point, he became the attorney for Paul. So he got a letter from Paul, who was in jail at the time. It began painting a much bigger picture of what was really happening. Many of his interviews with Paul were where Paul discussed the network. He discusses Johnny. These were before there was a lot of publicity on the case in Omaha. And there was a lot of things that Paul revealed about the network and revealed about Johnny, and actually mentioned Eugene, the other paperboy. That there was
the third one, right?
Well, yeah, no, the second one.
The second one was Eugene. Okay,
I'm so sorry. Let me go back.
Nope, you don't. It's okay. There's somebody read strings.
Okay, I'm sorry. I like I said, it's a lot of information. But he mentioned Eugene and he mentioned Johnny. There were things that he mentioned that just he could not have known. Period. And he had all of these letters. Paul had all of these letters that kids from the network had written to him, mentioning a man named Emilio. I can't say it. But they could not figure out who this man, what his real name was, how to find him. But he had all of this evidence, and the police still said it's not enough. He's making it up. So eventually, yep. Anyway, so eventually Paul went to court as a witness against many prominent individuals in Omaha that were being accused of child abuse. The grand jury claimed the abuse stories were a carefully crafted hoax, and Paul was charged with perjury, but those charges were eventually dropped. Basically, John, who was the attorney, made a statement that said sometimes there are forces that are too powerful, people who are just too big and too rich, and interests that you don't even understand or know anything about involved, that make it impossible for you to succeed and make it impossible for you to expose what is happening. So, again, these are very rich people, very powerful people, people who own banks and businesses and whatever else. And so in 1993, a well-regarded British production company was commissioned to make a film for the Discovery Channel about allegations of widespread child abuse in Omaha. I don't know what the original name of the film was supposed to be called, but now there's a YouTube video called Conspiracy of Silence, and it talks about how a man named Lawrence King, who did end up serving a jail sentence, but it was for money fraud. He was part of that Franklin scandal. He abused Paul, and he also had Paul lure boys off of campus for Lawrence to abuse. He tortured Paul. When the FBI investigated King, the money he had stolen led to the child abuse allegation, proof of child abuse allegations. However, once again, the FBI did not question Paul very much about King, and Paul stated, the FBI treated my statements about the people who abused me almost like a joke. So every time Paul mentioned a person that had been part of this network, who had abused him, who had made him do these disgusting things, who had made him go out and find other boys for them to abuse, the FBI just wrote it off. there was another part of the documentary where it said basically the victims were being treated as if they were the offenders. And so a lot of them didn't want to come forward. A lot of them didn't say anything. A lot of them just kind of hid in shame. So a lot of information they could have gotten, a lot of people they could have found, they never came forward because of how Paul was being treated. So during the filming of this movie, the production company received a notice out of the blue from the Discovery Channel that they were to cease all filming and work on the case immediately. The production company kept filming anyways and was eventually granted an interview with the FBI. This was years and years after the abductions happened. During the interview, they asked the FBI agent if he was familiar with the Johnny Gosch case. The FBI immediately stopped the interview and said they would not talk about the Johnny Gosch case at all and would not answer any more questions. Yep. At this point, America's Most Wanted investigators concluded that there was an institutional protection of people who had done bad things. They knew or stated that whoever was involved in this network controlled the police, they controlled the media, they controlled the FBI. They basically controlled what was being said and what was being done. And that is why it wasn't going anywhere. America's Most Wanted investigators did say that obviously the FBI is really great at doing a lot of things. It's a very necessary entity, but they were trying to cover up whatever was happening to save their reputation, and it probably snowballed and it got way out of hand. And basically rich and powerful people can get away with so many things because they throw money at it, and they can make people disappear and whatever else. So Paul stated a number of times that he just wanted to help prevent what happened to him from happening to other children. He said, I'm not trying to get a lesser sentence. I'm not trying to get people to forgive me for the things that I have done. He's like, I know that I was responsible for harming some children. I was responsible for helping some of these people. I'm not trying to excuse any of that. I'm trying to prevent from what happened to me from happening to other people. So in 1999, he filed a civil lawsuit against Lawrence King, accusing him of repeated sexual assaults, false imprisonment, and forcing him to scavenge for other children. King never appeared in court. The judge ruled the uncontradicted evidence is that the plaintiff has suffered much, all in connection with the multiple personality disorder caused by wrongful activities of the defendant. A fair judgment to compensate the plaintiff is necessary. So a judgment of $1 million was awarded in favor of Paul Bonnaci. However, the sum was never paid, never enforced. The American Most Wanted investigator was quoted saying, people who have never had their children taken from them cannot understand what it does to you. I think that what Noreen and John did on a national level to try and make people understand was heroic, and what they did for the missing children movement can never be underestimated, and what Paul tried to do cannot be underestimated. So it's important to note that this Paul guy, he eventually got out of prison. He changed his whole life around. He got married. He has his own children. He still spends his life trying to help people understand about this network that he was forced into. Again, police and FBI are not listening. So as I mentioned, this case is still a cold case. The 3 boys were never found. Unfortunately, Martin's parents died 2 decades ago, believing their son died shortly after his disappearance. Noreen, however, still believes that Johnny is alive. I mentioned the Johnny Gosch Foundation. That foundation was formed by his parents to help fund private searches for Johnny, but to also share child safety information. That was the In Defense of Children program. It was to help educate parents and other people on how to keep children safe. It is also worth mentioning that during one of the court cases for Paul, Noreen was actually asked to testify as a character witness for him. And during this trial, it was asked if she had ever seen her son since his initial disappearance. Not wanting to lie on stand, she said she had. Noreen Gosch said her son visited her at her home in the early morning hours of March 1997 in the company of another unidentified man. He would have been 27 at the time. She says her son told her that he was a victim of a sex ring and was cast aside when he was too old. He did not, excuse me, he didn't want to talk to her about the abuse that he had gone through, but he wanted to tell her what had happened to him. She believes her son is living under a new identity and does not believe it is safe for him to return home. During the visit, he proved his identity to her by showing her his very distinct birthmark on his chest. She said they talked for about half an hour, at which point he said he had to leave, and the man took him, and they got into a car and left. She has not seen him since. She claims the reason she kept that a secret for 2 years is because he had asked her to and made it very clear to her it was not safe for him if his abductors found out he had gone to visit her. Because of that, the media tore her apart. They said, you are so in the media, in people's faces, blah, blah, blah. Your son comes to visit you and you don't say anything. Why didn't you call for help? Why didn't you report it? Why didn't you say anything? And she's like, my number one job as a parent is to protect my child. And if my child tells me not to say anything because it could get him killed, I'm not going to say anything. She's like, as long as he's alive, there's a chance he'll come home. But why would he want to come home to all these people, basically saying it's not real? and so she's never seen him since. That was the one and last time she claims she saw him. No one else can prove that interaction happened. But again, there's no point for her to lie about that. Like, there's nothing for her to gain by saying I saw my son. So in one of Paul's trials, the Franklin child prostitution ring was mentioned, and this is what Lawrence King had been involved in. Like I said, I'm not going to get into too much detail about it because it's very disturbing what they were doing to these children. But if you want to research it, there's that's the full name of it: Franklin child prostitution ring, the Franklin scandal. There's 2 books on Amazon that are really good about it. I've read them. One is called The Franklin Cover-Up: Child Abuse, Satanism, and Murder in Nebraska, and the second is the one that was written by the author Nick, called Franklin Scandal: A Story of Power Brokers and Child Abuse and Betrayal. Both of them cover the case very well. They talk about this ring that was in Omaha. They talk about the powerful players that were involved and how they used their wealth and their fame and whatever else to basically not get caught. As Noreen says, when you are poor, you have to find your own victims. But when you are rich and you have money, you pay people to find your victims. And she said that was another problem because it was so hard to find these people because they weren't actually the ones out there abducting, risking their reputations and whatever else to get these children. They were just buying them. And because the police wouldn't investigate it, many of them were never found. And so Johnny would be turning 52 this year. There's a Facebook group called the Official Johnny Gosch Group. It is a private group, so you do have to join it. They talk about the case still. It's a very, very active group to this day. They talk about the case. They talk about different theories. They talk about new evidence that comes up or evidence that may not have been discussed in the documentary that came out like in the news, because there's tons and tons of news articles that come out. Every couple of years, there's more articles about it, more things that Noreen is doing to help missing children and fight for Johnny. And so I don't know if I mentioned it, but the documentary Who Took Johnny can be rented on Amazon Prime, or you can watch it for free if you have Sundance. It's not on Netflix. That's my story about Johnny Gosch and the efforts that were made by his parents to help other missing children, by Paul Bonnaci to help these children. So that's my story.
Wow. One of the things that was so striking to me, and I guess it's not shocking, and like Noreen said, it's appalling more than shocking, that there seem to be so many people unwilling to ask questions, look for answers. At first, it seemed like it was just the one person. It was the chief, and that there were other policemen who are saying, like, whatever he's doing is not okay because of his behavior, his drinking, or whatever. But it seemed like it was really kind of around this one person, but then it kept just kind of going deeper and deeper. And I've seen enough crime drama where, like, if the FBI shows up, the local police department doesn't have any say. Is that not right?
I mean, I don't know, but I would think the FBI would trump what a local police department had to say.
Exactly. Like, in all the movies, it's like, sorry.
I don't know if it's true or not, but I would just think in a missing child case where it's being claimed that he was human trafficked or whatever, that they would have authority. But if if people are interested in this case, they really, really need to watch Who Took Johnny. Because it is about an hour and 20 minutes. It's a very thorough documentary. It talks about Noreen's all of the things that she had to go through and all of the things that Paul Bonnaci went through. And it's just so disturbing when you listen to it. And when you listen to Paul talk about the things that were done to him and the things that he saw done to other children, and the police not even wanting to believe him. It's very, very disturbing.
It's so disturbing. That's probably like the worst part about it all.
And he listed people. He listed the names of people involved in this ring.
God.
And like I mentioned in the story, he got charged with perjury, basically saying he made it up. Because, you know, who can trust a man with a mental illness in jail?
Golly.
So.
Oh my God. Okay, so I'm going to read our answers to the question of the week. I'm going to start on our page.
Yes.
And it is obviously, what if you find yourself in a real life horror movie, what would be the thing about you that would get you killed? And Laura says fear paralysis, either that or hiding behind the chainsaws like in the commercial. I don't know that commercial.
It's the commercial where it's a group of people and they show up and there's a killer with a chainsaw. I think it's a chainsaw, and he's going to kill him, and instead of getting in the car, they have a running car with the headlights and everything. They run into this tool shed, and the wall's made out of like saws and knives and stuff, and that's where they decide to hide. And it's a complete parody of like horror movies. It's actually a really good commercial, but yeah.
I don't see commercials. Okay. Jesse says dropping things like keys. Ha! That's good. Though my saving grace is being able to throw really well, and the motto of everything can and will be used as a weapon. I always carry my giant green Nalgene bottle everywhere. Makes a good bludgeoning weapon. Hey, so she'll survive. She's a survivor. That's it.
Unless she drops the bottle.
Says, if she drops, she can pick it up, throw it. Melissa says, running in 20 circles because I forgot to grab something important. I'd assume having a killer after me would create some obstacles to the normal circles I run in before I can leave. A weapon would probably be the thing I kept forgetting. Melissa. Ashley, the other Ashley, my smart mouth.
It's an Ashley thing.
It's an Ashley thing. Mary says, probably laughing. I laugh in serious situations all the time. The killer would definitely find me.
That's
LOL.
my sister. She definitely does.
I would, there have been times when I've been given bad news and I laughed out of discomfort. Like you're not alone, dude. You're not alone. Okay, so I posted this on my page, and Michael or Shirley Kinchin said, being belligerent and argumentative. I'm going to guess that's probably Mike. Alice says, being a smartass. I would be one of the first to go. And
Glad
Catherine
I'm in the same
says,
boat with a lot of people.
I know. Catherine says same. Mandy says, sneeze attacks. My luck, I'd be hiding somewhere and then sneeze 20 times. I don't know that you get to the 20th sneeze. I think they'd find you before the 20th sneeze. And Lori says, I would probably stop for a snack.
Oh, same, girl, same.
That's a good one. That's a good one. It's true. Like, Huh. Huh. That's really funny.
Those were good answers.
Those were really good answers. Thank you, everybody, for answering next for our question of the week. You can still go back if you didn't get a chance to do that. You can still go back, get those answers in. We still love to read them, even if we're not on air. What else should everybody know?
I had to miss Halloween, my favorite holiday of the whole year. I live for Halloween. I was really sick on Halloween, and so I'm very upset. So I'm having my own Halloween every day for the rest of the year. You know, so if you see me out in Halloween attire and you see Halloween decorations, just mind your business. Because I'm celebrating for the rest of the year.
You know what? You can get the Nightmare Before Christmas decorations because it's the same.
Yeah.
You could just keep the same shit up. Put some Christmas hat on top of Jack's skeleton, you know?
We're on all the things. Facebook, Instagram. We're on all the streaming platforms. If you go to our website, you can leave us a review on our website. You can leave us a voicemail, which would be really cool.
Us
I want to see how it works, and I don't want to be the lame person that leaves themselves a voicemail. And, you know, share us, like us, review us. Thank you for still listening. Thank you for still being with us, even though we're a mess. I'm a mess.
We love you.
Yes, we love you very much. You can always reach out to us about anything. If you need help, if you just want to talk to somebody, you have a question of the week, story idea, if you want to be a host, you want your tarot cards read, whatever it is, message us. I have animal tarot cards. I can't promise you it'll be the answer that you want, but I'll read them.
You know, it'd be funny if like you read the tarot cards and I read the tarot cards, and we'll see like.
Oh yeah.
What if it was like the same?
Ooh.
Yeah. So if there's anything that you need from us, reach out. We love your ideas. We'd love to hear what's going on, and we'll be back same time next week.
Yes.
And
I think
until
next week
then,
is my birthday.
It is your birthday next week. Damn. I better get your present. Anyway, we'll see you next week. Until then, please be kind. Get Ashley a present.
Yes.
And just be good. Just be good. You know, we got a few more weeks until old Santa Claus comes to visit. So you still have time to get yourself on the good list, on the nice list. I think I'm permanently on the naughty list. But
I'm with you. So
I know. All right, everybody. We'll see you next week. Have a good one.
Bye.